So, now we have straight from C3 Port Hedland, the newest, youngest father in the pastoral team, Brad Holder.
Thank you. I'll probably need that one. Thanks very much, Pastor David. Man, happy Father's Day, everyone. How good is it? No, it's Father's Day. What's to go with this? What's with that? Happy Father's Day. Come on. There we go. That's better. And I bet online you guys are cheering just as hard, right? Surely. Hey, my name's Brad Holder. I am the newest father on the pastoring team. I'm also the only other father on the pastoring team, I think, besides Pastor David. So, but that's cool. I don't think it discounts it at all. But I'm the father of Lily as well, who you would have seen running around at some point. She's around somewhere. She's two and a bit years old now, and is absolutely amazing. I never thought being a father would be so awesome. And it's my third Father's Day, which is so cool. But hey, can we just honour Pastor David and Lil for a moment and just say a huge thank you and a round of applause to these guys? Because these guys are amazing. Not only are they phenomenal parents, but they are also the fathers of this church and mother of this church. And I just think that's so worth honouring. These guys do an incredible job, so thank you. But hey, today we're not just speaking to dads. We're speaking to anyone who maybe has ever had a dad. And I think that's pretty much everyone has had a dad at some point, or at least had some dad help them in the creation of themselves, right? Because that's kind of important. But for me, I only knew my dad until I was about 11 years old, a third of my life. So I'm just under 30. And when I was 11, he passed away, unfortunately. But I was so blessed to know him that long. One of my most vivid memories of my dad was I remember being out with my friends one day and coming home, and he was completely sick by this point. It wasn't long before he passed away, but he was at home riding around the house on my scooter, of all things, with a cap on back to front and like this whole gangster suit going on. And he was like late 50s, early 60s by this point. So it was kind of random, but he did it just to cheer us up, just because he thought it would be funny. And I really love that. And he had so many amazing values about him. Like, he would always hold the door open for everyone. You know, just those little value moments and those kind of things. He would never cuss. Like, he was always like, he would never say swear words or anything like that. And I remember being at the shops one time with him when he wanted to tell a bit of a naughty joke to some of his friends. And he actually made me walk like way far away and made me stay there. Then he went and told the joke, and I kind of overheard it over the distance. But I don't think he realised that, and it was pretty funny. But and then he came back and grabbed us afterwards, which was hilarious. And it kind of freaked me out a bit as well, because to that moment I had never heard him say a bad word at all. And that's really a value that's kind of just stuck with me as well, and kind of, I guess, helped make me who I am today. So isn't it amazing that someone can influence you so much just over 11 years, right? Like that's a third of my life, but it's still so influential as part of who I am today. And I just love that. And I was thinking through that when I was preparing this message and thought, well, you know what, with Lily, she's 2.5 already. And that's a quarter of the time that I spent with my dad. And it's like, wow, 2.5 years old, and you've got a quarter of that influence already, you know? Like, it's just phenomenal. I think sometimes we forget how much influence we have on the little ones in our lives. So, hey, I want to try something a little different this morning. This is going to be a bit out there. Hopefully you guys are open to it. We're one church here with C3 Port Hedland. We're on location here in the building, and we're online as well. So what I really want you guys to do in the room today is whip open your phones and open up the online stream. You can find it on Facebook. Just search C3 Port Hedland. Go for it. Grab your phones out. Open it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the online stream to open up the stream and turn the volume down, because otherwise we'll have like 50 volumes happening in the room right now of the same stream. So turn your volume all the way off, and we're going to use it as combined note-taking. So I want you to chat on there, and I want you to talk while we're giving this message, okay? Talk with each other, because the other thing is that with our online family, we are one family. So let's communicate with our online family and in our church at the same time. If there's something that resonates with you, you can type it in there. If it's something you don't like, you can type it in there. Go for it. You have full permission to do that. And you guys online do exactly the same thing. So hey, while you guys are getting set up, We're talking today about Father's Day, and we're talking about leaving a lasting legacy, as you can see on the screens. But what about those of us who don't have physical dads right now, maybe? Maybe your dad was abusive. Maybe he just wasn't around, or maybe in my case, he wasn't able to be around. Maybe you're in that same position. But I want you to know this morning that God is not constrained to those kind of situations. He's the perfect father who's always there and able to be on call. And I think that's something that we sometimes forget as well. You know, like God is always there on tap and he's always listening. He's always ready to chat with you. And I think that's just such an amazing concept that sometimes we don't grasp straight away. But my dad left a legacy within me through my values, as we just talked about. But I have a few questions for you this morning. And this is regardless if you're a dad, regardless if you're a mum, regardless if you're a teenager. Whatever age you are, I have these questions. What kind of a difference do you make? And I want you to think about these. What kind of a difference do you make? It might be in your workplace. It might be in your home. It might be your school. It might be right here in your church. Would people say that you're a positive influence? Or would they say that you're a bad influence? If someone was to look at you and say that, what do you think they would say about you? And if you were to die today, what would people say about you tomorrow? Now, there's some pretty deep questions there. And I think if there's any Connect Group leaders in the room here, those 4 questions are really great questions for your Connect Group. But the cool thing about this is that leaving a lasting legacy isn't a new concept by any stretch. It's not a new concept by any stretch at all. So we're going to look at Joshua 4 today, and that's where there's a bit of a story about leaving a legacy in it. So the backstory for this is that 40 years prior to Joshua 4, there were Israelite slaves, right, in Egypt. And then Moses came along, and with God's instruction and help, took them out of slavery, right? So he led them out of slavery with God's help. And we're going to there's a slide 1 here, Elma. That's no verses just yet, please. But there's a slide there, slide 1, which is a bit of a map. And this is a map of a journey that the Israelites actually went on during these 40 years. So if we could pull that one up, that would be awesome. There we go. So you can see right up there, you've got Egypt in the top left corner. And you can see that the journey and the path that they went down all the way through as they got right up to the very top. And up the very top there's the Jordan River. So it's a bit small on this, but you can see number 17 up the very, very, very top. That's where we are today. So we're talking about that point. So they spent 40 years wandering the wilderness, and through that whole time, God provided for them. It says in Numbers 13 and 14 that the reason that they wandered the wilderness for 40 years was not because it was a long journey, but actually because it was due to their lack of faith. And I just thought that was really interesting. It's like, you know, how many times for us are we stuck in a place right now because of our lack of faith? And it's like, wow, imagine if we could go to the next level just with more faith, you know, like really turbocharge that. But they weren't meant to stay there. God was providing for them. But in the scheme of things, God had that as a small blessing, right? The big blessing was yet to come once they actually made it to the promised land, okay? So they had the promised land as a blessing towards them, and that was coming soon. But in order to get to the promised land, it was a bit of a journey. So Elmer, if we could hit up slide 2, please. I thought, why not take this into context? Let's jump on Google Maps and take this into today's context of where this actually is. Because it always comes real for me when I see the biblical stuff put into today's picture, right? So this is Google Maps, and you can see the red marker there. That's where we're heading. You can see where we're looking. So we've got Africa there. There's Turkey, there's Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Iraq all in there. Next slide, please, Elma. We're going to zoom in bit by bit. So then we've got Egypt, we've got Turkey above, Saudi Arabia, and our red marker is where we're flying at the moment. One more in, Elma, please. There we go. So we've got Israel down the bottom. And you might be able to see just up there, there's Nazareth, there's Jerusalem, but we're going a bit more north than that. One more in, please, Elma. Losing track of what we're up to now. There we go. So we are starting over here. The tribe are currently in Shittim. Make sure you pronounce that one correctly. And you can see the black circle there of where they are. And next slide, please, Elma. They are trying to get to the promised land in Canaan right there. So you can see it's a bit of a journey. And then the next slide, please, Elma. There is the Jordan River right in between the two. Now, I don't know about you, but usually when you try to get from one place to another by foot, it's pretty hard if there's a massive river in your path, right? That kind of puts a spanner in the works. So next one, please, Elma. So this is where they were traveling. They had to get from A to B just there across the Jordan River. So to complicate things even further than that, the river was actually at flood stage during this time as well. It was deeper than normal, and the current was way stronger than usual as well. So that would have been a problem for anyone else. But keep in mind that these same Israelites 40 years ago had seen the part, well, some of them maybe passed on stories through legacy. They had seen the story of the Red Sea and the parting of that as well. So they obviously had a bit of faith with that one. So God then stopped the flow of the Jordan long enough to allow the people from the east to the west, which is a pretty amazing thing, right? So that's just happened, and that's where we're going to pick up the text here today. So let's have a look at Joshua 4. Kicking off with 1. If you've got your Bibles on you, feel free to open them up. And hopefully you guys are commenting wild on the live stream, and our chat hosts have no idea what to do right now. So hey, when the whole nation was finally across, God spoke to Joshua. Select 12 men from the people, a man from each tribe, and tell them, from right here in the middle of the Jordan River, the middle of the Jordan, where the feet of the priests are standing firm, take 12 stones and carry them with you and set them down in a place where you camp tonight. Joshua called out the 12 men from whom he selected from the people of Israel, one man from each tribe. Joshua directed them, cross to the middle of the Jordan and take your place in front of the chest of God, your God. Each of you heft a stone to your shoulder, a stone for each of the tribes of the people of Israel. So you have something later to mark the occasion. This is important, right? When your children ask you, what are these stones to you? You'll say, the flow of the Jordan was stopped in front of the chest of the covenant of God as it crossed the Jordan, stopped in its tracks. These stones are a permanent memorial of the people of Israel. Verse 8, the people of Israel did exactly as Joshua commanded. They took the 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, a stone for each of the 12 tribes, and just as God has instructed Joshua, carried them across with them to the camp and set them down there. Joshua set up the 12 stones taken from the middle of the Jordan and had marked the place where the priests who carried the chest of the covenant had stood. They are still there today. Now, as Pastor David clarified for me, this is definitely when the Bible was written. They're probably there still today somewhere, because I was kind of like, I wonder if I can find a photo of these online anywhere. This would be so cool to see. But obviously this was at the time of writing. So the stones are probably still there. So imagine this concept. Imagine if someone kind of walks past some random stones all over the place and they don't even know the history that these particular stones have had. Isn't that amazing? Like just that concept of like walking past something that's just sitting there and you don't even realize it. I just think that's so cool. So verse 10, the priest carrying the chest continued standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything God had instructed Joshua to tell the people to do was done, confirming what Moses had instructed Joshua. The people crossed. No one dawdled, and when the crossing of all the people was complete, they watched as the chest of the covenant and the priests crossed over. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of the Manasseh had crossed over to the battle formation in front of the people of Israel, obedient to Moses' instructions. All told, about 40,000 armed soldiers crossed over before God to the plains of Jericho, ready for battle. God made Joshua great that day in sight of all of Israel. They were in awe of him, just as he had been in awe of Moses all his life. So obviously Moses left such a legacy there as well. God told Joshua, command the priests carrying the chest of the testimony to come up from the Jordan. Joshua commanded the priests, come up out of the Jordan, and they did it. The priests carrying God's chest of the covenant came up from the middle of the Jordan, and as soon as the soles of the priests touched priests' feet touched dry land, the Jordan's waters resumed their flow within the banks just as before. Isn't that crazy? The people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. They set up camp at Gilgal, the circle, to the east of Jericho. Joshua erected a monument at the Gilgal, using the 12 stones that they had taken from the Jordan. And then he told the people of Israel, in the days to come, when your children ask their fathers, what are these stones doing here? Tell your children this. Israel crossed over the Jordan on dry ground. Yes, God, your God, dried up the Jordan's waters for you until you had crossed, just as God, your God, did at the Red Sea, which had dried up before us until we have crossed. This was so that everybody on earth would recognize how strong God's rescuing hand is, and so that you would hold God in solemn reverence always. That's pretty amazing, right? And what I find really cool about this is those 12 stones, right? Those 12 stones are there as a symbol of the legacy that not only Moses, but Joshua and what God did for his people in that time. I just love that. I think that's such a cool thing. But the thing is that God has called us here for a place of spiritual leadership. Every single person here. Every born-again believer. So back to the original question, right? What kind of a difference are you making? What legacy are you leaving behind? What are your stones, right? What kind of an impact are you making? Today's Father's Day, so dads, what kind of a difference are you making in your homes? Maybe you're pointing to athletics. Maybe it's academics. Maybe it's entertainment, right? Leaving a lasting legacy means that you're leaving something of value and worth. And while athletics and academics and entertainment, they're enjoyable and they're great, they're noble, they're awesome, are they really what the next generation might see as the most important thing? Let us never forget to leave our children with the most important realities of this life and the next. I think that's just so important. And we really need to be intentional about what we leave behind, like what can be our stones here? What are those, We want the next generation to come up and look at something and go, what is that? And then you pass on that story of legacy, What spiritual legacy are you leaving behind? There's one other thing that my dad left me behind. And that's this. This was a guitar that I got before he passed away. It was just a second-hand guitar, just an old playing guitar. There's nothing special about it. You can see it's been super glued like 10,000 times to try and keep it together and keep it playable and working. It doesn't sound very good anymore at all. In fact, it's not even playable. But this guitar means so much to me. And the reason it means so much to me is because before this point, I hadn't played any guitar at all. And it wasn't until just after he passed away that I started to play guitar on it and started to learn guitar. And the amazing thing about that is, for me, imagine if I never got that guitar. It was just a little thing. He thought, oh, that'd be nice for the kids to have. I'll get one of those. One of his friends was selling it. Something so small is so impactful in my life, because if I had never learnt to play guitar, then, I'd be in a very different position right now, It would have really influenced my life in a whole different way. So I just think it's so important for us to remember. Sometimes we forget the little things that we do in our kids' lives are so vital and so important. Something so minute like that could have taken me on a whole different trajectory my entire life. So as we lead our families, our homes, our jobs, and our personal lives, let's each of us remember that we have to leave a legacy, right? Intentionally. We have to intentionally leave a legacy. I'm sure even at the Jordan, there were people kind of critically standing back going, is this real? I don't know if this is going to be possible. Like, when this really happen, But it was God's way, and it was what he promised, and it was the right way. And I think we've got to keep that in mind. So each of us need to be challenged to leave behind a lasting legacy, a lasting biblical legacy, I think that's so important with each generation that comes after us. So we need to remember that we have more influence than we think. We really do. And maybe you're a teenager. If you're a teenager, younger kids are still looking up to you. That's something that we tell all of our youth leaders. The younger kids are looking up to you right now. And they're going to model what you're doing. Maybe you're a single adult. It's the same thing. What are the teenagers doing? The teenagers are looking up to you, right? And they're modeling what you're doing. Maybe you're a dad. What are you leaving for you and your family? What are you modeling for your kids? And if you're any adult as well, at any point, I think, there are people looking up to you. So it's so important to be aware of that. So look, let us all leave a godly legacy. But there's one more thing as well. And that's the ultimate sacrifice. The ultimate father sent his only son. And I think as fathers, we can kind of think about that and just go, or even as mothers, as parents, we kind of think that's a pretty crazy thing, to send your only son is an amazing thing. And the best thing about that is that the Father wants to have a relationship with you. He wants to have a relationship with you. But in order to do that, you've got to be open to it. You've got to be open in order for that to happen. And we're going to give you the opportunity for that today. So why don't you just stand with me? And if you're online, you can do this as well. With every eye closed, we're going to pray a prayer together. And this prayer is you accepting God into your life. If you've never done this before, maybe, then this is a big day, and we're here to celebrate with you. And if you pray this prayer for the first time, then we really want you to let us know. We want to hear about it, because we want to help you on this journey, whether you're online, whether you're here in the building with us. We want to help you with this new journey of relationship with the incredible, incredible, original dad. So with every eye closed, let's pray this together. I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. I believe he died and rose again to forgive my sins and give me life. I receive your grace by faith. Come into my life, make me new. I'll follow you. If you just prayed that for the first time, then congratulations, you are now a Christian. Let's celebrate that. And we want to hear from you. So please come on and tell someone. Whether you've seen someone on stage, Pastor David, Pastor Lil, anyone that you've seen serving, come and tell us, because we want to help you on this journey.